Wiping the sweat from her brow, Claire sighed as she looked at the small pile of throwing daggers that were finished. Though the quality was still lacking, there were significant improvements compared to when they first started out. At least the balance is starting to get fixed. I'm getting a better sense of forging the dagger the way I want it to end up as, which is a definite plus. Claire thought to herself. Raising her hand, she studied the dagger that was just completed. With her index finger, Claire tried to balance the throwing dagger. Slowly, the blade was moved so that both ends were leveled. Just below where the blade meets the hilt, Claire nodded as she made a mental note on what likely caused the issue. Claire's eyes looked at Hannah, who was checking on the balance of the dagger she'd created. It looked to be balanced as it sat on the tip of her finger. "Show off," Claire hissed, flicking the weapon into the air and snatching it. Hannah grinned. "Instead of worrying about what I'm doing, shouldn't you be more concerned about being so far behind? Are you going to even be able to catch up at this point?" Clicking her tongue, Claire looked at the neatly lined up daggers on one of the workstations. Each dagger looking better than the previous version. Even more significant was how many of them there were, compared to the pile that Claire had on the floor. At this point, I'm just focusing on not letting her get too far ahead. Claire mentally clutched her head, frustrated by the sheer difference in skill. Hannah giggled, recognizing the internal struggle Claire was experiencing in their competition. Grabbing a nearby dull dagger, Claire furiously began rubbing the monster leather on the blade. "We should be able to get a decent amount of guild points with these daggers," Hannah commented as she placed the dagger she'd been testing on the table with the others. "It feels like the food had a decent impact on our ability to make these." Hannah nodded approvingly at her work. Pretending to ignore her friend, Claire mentally agreed. The biggest improvement was connected to their stamina. Their increased stamina helped them to crush the coke faster, in addition to breaking down the iron ore, separating the dirt and rubble with the valuable element. It was a great feeling, not getting exhausted from lifting and slamming the tool into the container repeatedly over a long period of time. As time passed, she kept trying to finish as many daggers as possible, though the gap between her and Hannah didn't feel as though it was shortening regardless of her efforts. Tossing several more finished daggers onto the pile, Claire stretched her arms, feeling tired from the repeated work. "It's like I'm an adult, though I'm the age of a typical high schooler," Claire complained out loud to no one in particular. Ready to admit defeat, Hannah egged on her friend. Clenching her teeth together, Claire growled, "Next time won't be so easy. Don't think that your superior skills will always be an advantage. I'll eventually make you cry tears of frustration with my weapon someday." Raising a hand to her mouth and laughing, Hannah said, "Just the barkings of someone with inferior skills." Claire ended up bursting out laughing, unable to keep up the facade of anger towards her best friend. "Seriously, you're way too good at making these weapons." "It's nice to know that you've accepted that." Hannah giggled at Claire's glare at the jab. "Though compared to your fighting skills, I have a ways to go. So it's pretty nice that I'm better at something." She smiled. "The difference isn't that big," Claire complained at the comparison. Either way, Hannah brushed aside Claire's protests. How about we take the stuff we've made to Darlena and see if any of it can be sold to the guild? She grabbed the carrying case they picked up from the store after they'd eaten earlier. Then we can finally get to sleep. Claire sighed dreamily, fantasizing about her bed in the rented room.